It is my pleasure now to introduce someone I know through the National AHEAD Association. Jorja Waybrant is from Dickinson College in Pennsylvania. She will talk about Pennsylvania Cares and other things that's happening there. We realize this is outside New England for those folks who are keeping track. However, we felt that Jorja has so much to offer, and we were very happy that she accepted our invitation to come to Boston and to speak with us this afternoon and prepare.
Hello, I'm waiting for the PowerPoint. Okay. I'd like to introduce myself again. I'm Jorja Waybrant. I'm an Assistant Director of Advising and Coordinator of Disability Services at Dickinson College. I'm also a member of the Educational Subcommittee for PA Cares. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce and give you some information and background about PA Cares. PA Cares is a collaborative network formed in the state of Pennsylvania. It's made up of individuals from federal, state, and local agencies, including higher ed, who have all gotten together and formed a task force in order to support our veterans in the state. In the number of troops that have been deployed for both OEF and OIF, the two conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq. And within PA Cares, we have an educational subcommittee, we have a TBI subcommittee, and also an outreach subcommittee. Within the educational subcommittee, we have both a higher ed initiative and what we consider a K-12 initiative or military child initiative, because we try to look at supporting our veterans from we try to take a holistic approach in supporting our veterans. My objective today in this presentation is to provide all of you as DS providers with information on how to serve veterans on your campus. I would also like to, what I'm going to be doing is talking about the networks both on campus and off campus. I'd like to ask one question if you can raise your hand. How many of you are from a large institution where you have maybe, let's say, 15,000 or more students on campus? Can you raise your hand high? Okay, not a whole lot. How many of you are coming from institutions where there are roughly, let's say, 5,000 to maybe 15,000 students on campus? Okay, more hands. How many of you are from small institutions, less than, let's say, 5,000 students? About student veterans, one of the things that you want to think about is student veterans right now they are the fastest growing subgroup on college campuses today. They are also not one homogeneous group. When you listen to our student panelists today, you'll notice that all these student veterans, they're all coming from very different backgrounds. We had males, we had females, there were different variances there. And they have different types of disabilities, and so you need to consider all of those different demographics in the mix. This is a list of some of the demographic variances that I will be discussing today. Gender, marital status, dependent status, et cetera. Status as a student, are they a full-time student? Are they a part-time student? Those will matter when you come to thinking about the types of services that you are as a veteran. This here is a more extensive list. And this list is taken from the PA Care survey that we sent out to our student veterans. You can't see everything that's on here. I think the captioning is covering some of them, but actually there were more than 30 on this list. There are more than 30 on this list. And when you look at our survey that went out to, or is going out to our student veterans, we actually have more. I did not include everything in here. These demographics don't talk about their economic background. These demographics also don't speak about, you know, educational background. They may be a first-time generation employed for OEF and OIF. They are leaving behind dependents. They're leaving behind spouses. They may be leaving children, parents, siblings, girlfriends, boyfriends, and you need to consider all of those into the mix. You also need to think about the financial aid package that you're providing. And if you're from a public institution, chances are the veterans on your campus may be able to go free and not have any tuition or any financial expenses. But it's very possible that if you're a private institution, they may. So you need to consider, you know, what are these veterans? Are they who can tell me why I didn't title it higher ed? What's the difference? An idea from anyone? What does post-secondary ed encompass that higher ed doesn't? Yes?
Could be technical training schools.
Exactly, exactly. And a lot of times when we're thinking about student veterans, often our focus is on colleges and universities. But in reality, they're also tapping into the vocational and technical schools as well. And so we need to consider that. And that's going to be very important for you folks here in the New England ahead. How many here are from vocational technical schools? No one. So you need to think about reaching out. Pulling from the GI Bill in order to enroll in these schools. And you're seeing some problems, and I'll bring that out a little bit later. When you're talking about post-secondary ed, you're looking at institutions, and there will be variances in the type of institution. You may have a 2-year institution. You may be coming from a 4-year institution, maybe private, maybe public, maybe a graduate school or graduate program. You may be from an online school or have online programs. You may have evening programs. So you need to consider all of this in the mix of whenever you're delivering the services to your students. You also need to think in terms of size. Do you have a large student population or do you have a small student? The large universities. And that is wonderful. They may have large populations, maybe 500 or more student veterans. They may have 300 student veterans. But the reality is when we did we pulled our statistics from our survey within the state of Pennsylvania, what we found was that the majority of the schools are not the large schools. So that model that's happening at these large universities, they won't work when you have one student veteran. They won't work when you have 5 or you have 10 or you have 20. So we need to have different models that will work for these students and help them. I'm going to come back to delivery programs and services and financial aid. know what was happening on the campus and how they were serving student veterans. And out of the 140 survey questionnaires that we sent out, we received 94 responses, which is a 67% response rate, which was extremely high. This is one question that we asked on the survey, but only 54 of those respondents responded to this particular question. When we went back and looked further into it, what we found is the majority, these 40 non-respondent responses, they were basically small schools. So we're making the assumption that they had either 0 or very few veterans on campus. But when you look at these serve 5 or less. That's 22%. 22% of those who answered this serve 5 or less. When you look at this top section of the 3 up there, nearly 50% of those who responded to this question serve less than 20 veterans. So again, I'm trying to emphasize that these programs that are working at these large schools where they have large veteran populations, they will not necessarily translate to the smaller schools. This is a little more of an extensive list of the demographics for student veterans. Some of it is cut off at the bottom, but I think all of you have the PowerPoint with that information. On campus, but not every school has a VA rep. How many schools here do not have a VA rep? Okay. DS provider. Now, seems like a funny question. I'm assuming everyone here is a DS provider. And you may be surprised, why do I have this up here? But believe it or not, there are colleges that do not have a DS provider on campus. I get people who call me asking about our model, saying they want to think about setting this up because they're getting more and more students on campus, and they don't have a DS provider. I know one of the schools in my consortium does not have a DS provider. They have somebody in their academic advising office who works with students with disabilities. When you get into the vocational and technical school survey, which went out to all the vocational and technical schools in the state of Pennsylvania, they reported having 10 veterans on campus, and here was their comment. I am aware that large post-secondary institutions have fully staffed, dedicated, and trained VA offices on campus to assist their students. Smaller schools need both training and financial assistance from VA if they want the same type of program available. VA could provide a dedicated on-campus rep to each career school to cover areas such as medical, psychological, et cetera. We simply can't provide. And when they're talking about the issues that they're seeing among their student veterans on campus. They don't have a DS provider, and they're talking specifically about issues of medical and psychological. So in your state or in your region, but you're not delivering the services from the same departments. You may not be offering all these services on your campus. So services are going to vary from one school to the next. And you need to think about where your services are being offered, the offices and departments are being offered from, and where they're located on campus. The other thing is the other question you need to think about is who is a VA certifying official? And I believe I heard Gus talk about that a few minutes ago. Who can tell me what is a VA certifying official? Anyone? Would anyone like to? if you have someone who is going to attend your school and pull from the GI Bill, your school must designate someone on campus to be a VA certifying official. It can be a person from the financial aid office, from the admissions office, from the registrar's office. It doesn't matter where they come from. They're not going to get money from the VA to do this. This is just a person that your school has to designate as a VA certifying official. And it's very important, especially if you're from a small or medium-sized school, or if you have a small student veteran population, to know who this individual is. Because this person is the first line in knowing who your student veterans are on campus. So you really need to get out there and make that connection. The financial package that your school is offering, because if your veterans are getting a full financial package, they should be good. If they're not and they're struggling economically, chances are they're higher risk of dropout. The other areas of variances is services. Your services needs should be based on your needs. You need to think in terms of, do you have a large student population or do you have a small student population? And again, you can have there's two different models. You could have 3 different models. There can be 4, there can be 25 different models, and they can all still be successful. You also need to think in terms of your institution and your programs. What are you offering? If you are offering online programs in your school, if you have classroom programs and it's Monday through Fridays just during daytime hours, then perhaps you shouldn't just open the Disability Service Office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. You may think about, oh, perhaps we need to offer evening hours so they can come in and tap into our service. If you are a school and you are offering online programs, think that there's a chance you may have veterans out there with disabilities who are enrolled in the course, but they're doing an online program because they may have a disability and they may be thinking, I have a hearing impairment, I can't sit in a classroom, so I'm going to do this online program. You need to think in terms of how you can do outreach to reach these individuals in order to get information about who you are and what you do. Data from our phase 1 survey with PA Cares. And one of the questions we asked was about outreach programs or services that they were doing on campus. And you'll notice here, it's not real clear, but when asked about, actually it's below there, it asked about veteran-only courses. Only 5% of the schools that responded said they were offering veteran-only courses. If you notice here, veteran groups on campus, veteran lounges are only offering only 8% of the schools were offering veteran lounges. When you look up here, veteran organizations, only 17% of those reported in Pennsylvania said they were offering at their school veteran organizations. Or do you think it might be because they have very small numbers? So again, I'm trying to emphasize that. Don't always think in terms of large student populations. You need to think about how you can help veterans if you have a small student population. The areas up at the top, when you look at those services and outreach programs that exist and are being offered, they really have nothing to do with numbers. It's about getting web information out, and that's something that you can do whether you have a small population or a large population. Also, 78% were giving credit for Armed Forces experience. One of the questions I've seen come up in presentations, national presentations, I've seen it in reports, research reports that have been written, where they have asked, you know, for veterans, but guess what? They didn't come, they didn't show up. When we surveyed our schools in Pennsylvania, what we actually found was they reported 74% or higher reported that student veterans were making moderate use or higher of the services that existed. So feel comfortable when you set that if you set services up that they will actually come and tap into those. This is a list, not an exhaustive list by any means, but it is a list of, and it's in the papers again, it's a list of some of the services that you will find on institutions or in institutions where there are large veteran populations. One of the things I want to point out here is fit in all of this. And the best suggestion I can give to you is you need to find out what are all the services on your campus that are being offered to veterans. Where are all these departments? Where are they located? Who are those colleagues? And then you need to get out and connect with each and every single one of them. That's your role. That's what you need to be doing. You need to connect with them. You need to do outreach. You need to say, hey, I'm a disability service provider. This is what I can do. This is what I can offer to these student veterans. Let them know this. Get written information out to them. Get oral information out to them. Get going to develop within your office. It's about the outreach. And each of you should be doing that outreach instead of thinking of your office as being as an oasis and existing alone by itself. These are some of the services that you will see on small campuses or where there's a small veteran population. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but what you're going to see in those programs, they're going to have more one-on-one hands-on service, which is what they typically do with most students on their campus anyways. But one of the things here I want to point out, again, you see this veteran-to-veteran mentors. But you may not have, if you have one student veteran, what are you going to do? If you only have a few, what are you going to do? You're going to look among your staff and your faculty and your administrators to see, do we have veterans? And would they be willing to mentor these students? So it's still a veteran-to-veteran. A sash, a pin, a patch, whatever it may be. And because you have a small student veteran population, you might want to think in terms of bringing in the yellow ribbon recipient. I know the first yellow ribbon recipient on my school is not a veteran. It's actually a dependent of a veteran. So you need to be inclusive and think about them as well. This is another thing that's very, very important, the military service campus group. This is connecting vital and key people on college, on your campus, and bringing them together. I kind of starred the admissions rep because they are on our school, on our campus, they are actually heading this campus group, and this person also we're adding a student veteran. You know, it's not just about faculty and administrators and staff on this. It's about bringing veterans in. And if you have only one veteran, bring them on and have them be part of this group so they can tell you what would be needed. If you only have a few, the same thing. If you have a yellow ribbon recipient who's a dependent, bring them in as well so you can get more information. You can also extend beyond and pull in parents or alumni who are veterans, people in the community etc. Whoops. Okay, again, when it comes to services, you definitely want to consider what is the role of the Disability Service Office. And your role in all of this is, again, to find out in our phase 1 survey was, does your institution provide outreach to faculty with the following? And you can see the numbers were very low. Only 21% of the colleges that responded said they even do outreach on issues of student veterans with disabilities. And faculty are, pretty much first line because these students are coming into their classroom. So they really need to know for referral purposes, what are the issues. When it comes to student veterans as a whole, only 10%. And that's a problem too, because veterans with disabilities are included in this group as well. So you need to think about that. That's why I'm involved in the military child issue. I had a daughter who was at Temple University 3 years ago. She was a junior, and her husband was deployed to Iraq for the first time. And before he went, she was a pre-health major, sitting at about 3.5. And the semester that he was deployed, she dropped to 1.67. She suffered from depression, was going to the psychiatrist on campus. She was also a student with a disability. She has ADHD. So she had a lot of problems. And, I would talk with her and you need to go here and you need to go there. And what happened was she did. She went to everyone. She was a student athlete. Her cumulative GPA was still high, but her semester GPA was very low. And she was going to the Disability Service Office and the psychiatrist on campus, and they all looked at her and said, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do for you. And I don't think they ever even asked her about the dependent or the military issue. That never, ever came up. So, you need to think about that. You need to do that kind of outreach on campus. Because I remember when she was telling me about this, she had a multitude of friends who had either girlfriends or boyfriends that were being deployed. So, they were all being affected as well. You need to think about that component. Okay. What does a successful model look like? Okay, so when you're thinking in terms of what you're going to do on your campus, what would you say? You're going to be thinking about is graduation, okay? We're going to set up services so that we can graduate these student veterans at the same rate of all students on campus. And the third component, the third area, which is really, really important, you cannot forget this, and this is post-graduation employment. If you bring a veteran into your campus, and there are a number of schools that are trying to recruit veterans highly because they want the monies, they want the veterans there. And if you're bringing them in and you're setting up services so you can retain them and you can graduate them, but they can't get a job when they leave, what good did that graduation certificate do? Two helpful forms, and I believe they were going to be provided to everyone in the conference materials. I'm not able to set them up all on one slide, so I sort of divided them 2 by 2. And the first one is goal setting. This is a helpful form for those of you in the DS office when you're working with veterans. This is a typical type of form that you see in your time management form. With time management, I really try to work with individuals in goal setting. It's about having them think long-term about their academic career and setting a goal. Remember, goals need to be specific, they need to be measurable, they need to be achievable. But setting up a long-term goal and thinking about 3 ways that they are going to reach that long-term goal. But the second component of this form, which is particularly helpful for veterans, is remove the barrier or overcome the barrier. So you want to think about using that with veterans. Here's another form. This is a veteran-to-veteran mentoring form. Again, this can be used for student veterans, mentoring student veterans. It can be used for faculty, administrators who are veterans that are mentoring other veterans. This is 2 parts. This is the upper half of the form. But you would have a student, a veteran come in, put their name on it, put their contact information on it. And then they would go to the second half, and they would go to this column, and they would put down, they'd put a check in the area where they need assistance. Okay? Then you office and you're working with these individuals, great. If you have a VA rep on campus, get this form over to them so they can be using it. And then, or you have a mentor. Yes, Caroline.
If you have a veteran center, I just snagged a copy of it, looking over it. If you have a veteran center on your campus, get it to the vet center coordinator or director or wherever's running it on your campus. Because there are 9 times out of 10, with the exception of that VA rep on your campus, can have more interaction with your vets than anybody else. The VA rep is the only person who has more interaction on this campus. And then myself and, well, of course, the gentleman behind me that works at Joiner Center or the ones that work at Vets Up or Down. Those are the great places on this campus where they make sure that, you know, this stuff is done. But those are the people you want to talk to.
Excellent idea. Thank you very much. I also want to tell you that this form I pulled and adapted from this book. You can't see it, it's down at the bottom, but it is noted on the form that you have. It comes from a book, Returning Wars Wounded, Injured, and Ill. And this book was written for wounded warriors. It's about taking them from their injury to hospitalization, to recovery, and then into areas of education and employment and life in general. And it walks them through step by step, chapter by step, a chapter of how to be dealing with this injury, these war wounds now, and how it may impact them psychologically and physically. There's one chapter in the book, chapter 3, that is written, it's extensive information on post-traumatic stress. Though this book was written for wounded warriors, to make sure that you get a copy of it on your campus because it's an excellent resource guide. The last area that I want to talk about today is collaborative networks. This is my biggie. This is where PA Cares comes from. And I want you to think about in terms of collaborating on campus. This is absolutely essential. Think about who you are and what you do. And again, don't be an oasis out there. You need to be out. You need to be collaborating with other offices on campus. These are the types of offices that you need to be collaborating with. You need to be talking about them. I do have the Career Center down here, and this is a biggie because there are a lot of programs out there that are hire vets first, and they need to know that. Again, so area is off-campus collaboration. You need to think in terms about extending beyond your campus where you might feel comfortable, and you need to collaborate. Pick up the phone and call another school that you may know someone or even someone you don't and ask them, how many student veterans do you have on campus? What are you doing to serve them? What works, what doesn't work? Think about your own campus and how you might adopt some of that model into your own program as well. The other off-campus collaboration with other campuses is with other post-secondary campuses is, again, each and every single one of you here, you have a wealth of information. I'm assuming the majority, if not all of you, are DS providers. You have information about ADA, about Section 504, about accommodating students with disabilities in higher ed, and about helping them out. To these vocational and technical schools, out to these trade schools, out to these beauty schools and massage schools and places you would never think about, but you do have veterans that are tapping into those services and with the GI Bill. And the thing is, if that's what they're doing, getting them through those programs is equally as important as a campus that has 450 or 300 or 500 or whatever it may be. So think about that. The other collaboration, this is the very last one, is you need to be collaborating with federal, state, and local agencies. From what I'm told, with other people, go to your reps from the vet centers, talk to your VA rep on campus, see what you can get together. I gave you the name of PA Cares. I also listed our website on there, our web address on there. Go in and take a look and see what we are. Who are the agencies that are participating? And think about how that translates to your state and how you can bring that together in order to help these veterans. And this actually is the end of my presentation. I hope the information that I have provided to you has been helpful. I will be around this evening for the reception and the dinner. And please, if you have any questions, come up and talk to me. I'm more than happy to help you.